It was in the German army over there in Germany. They had to put in 6 months of service. And of course he had his in already when he came to the United States. And he came here in 1914, I guess it was. Yeah. And the war was over with it in 18, I think.
And he went to Pennsylvania first, right?
Yeah, well, when he came over here, he landed in Pennsylvania, and he worked for some farmers out there, I guess, in Pennsylvania. And well, he didn't like it. So he got his ticket. He was getting ready to go back.
Well, he couldn't
back
speak
to
any
Germany.
English, wasn't that part
Yeah,
of
he
it?
couldn't speak English.
And so he fell out of place.
Yeah,
He
fell out
decided
of
to
place.
go
So he went to the tavern the night before. He had his ticket bought already, and talked with the tavern guy there, and told him he was going back to Germany and Europe. And the tavern guy told him, he says, "Why don't you go back to Wisconsin? There's a German settlement out there." He said, all the Germans went to Wisconsin and came over here. So that's what he did. He came to Wisconsin then, and he worked for some farmers. One of them was a Fuchs, and them boys are like the Fuchs brothers truckers. That was their dad, you know, that he worked for. And he worked for Herman Wonkrel. He had a farm there, and Herman Wonkrel, he was pretty well up, you know, and he had a daughter. And he told Pa, "You marry my daughter, you can have the farm, you know." But he didn't.
He didn't.
He just wanted to get married.
Didn't like the daughter?
I don't know if he liked her or not. But anyway, it was a bargain. He was trying to bargain, you know. He worked for different ones around in the neighborhood. And anyway, he met my mother by Grandpa Schwartz. He used to cut a lot of wood in the wintertime, and he'd have it hauled with a sled, you know, down the plain. He'd get $2.50 for it. They had a wagon box with a top box on it. And he used to rake it in there. He got $2.50 for a load like that. Haul it down. It was 6 miles to haul it down the plain. And he got $2.50 for a load of wood like that. Green. And it wasn't split. It was just left it in a round, you know.
big money.
The purchaser had split it himself in a way. And my dad was cutting wood too at the time around in the neighborhood, and he hired my dad. Grandpa Schwartz hired my dad to come up there and cut, you know. And my mom went right out and helped saw with the crosscut saw. They blocked it all up, you know, with a 2-man crosscut saw. And that's fairly where they met, you know.
So they were working opposite ends of the saw?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Handling each other, you know, with a crosscut.
Yeah. And how old were they both then when they got married?
My dad was, I think, 31 or something like that. Ma was 19. Yeah. Oh, it was a treasure time. And we were on the 1st of August. And Pa said, "You guys go up." We had a big road. Our land was up on the top of a flat, you know, and there was a ridge road going up.
And that was in Plain, right?
Yeah, and we had to always keep the doggone road repaired, you know, because the water would run down, and we had what they call tank him on, you know, you had to dig a little ditch across so that when the water come down, it would run off down and not run all the way down and wash everything out, you know. So we had about 8 or 10 of them in about a half a mile, you know, up and up to where the field was on top of the ricket. And we were fooling around, and here comes the doggone old car tire laying there up on it, and we started poking around with that doggone thing. And Valley, he got into it and went around with his neck and around behind his knees, you know. And we kind of rolled him around, and the doggone thing got away on us, and it went down over the bank and went down. It just went to it was about a quarter of a mile down to the creek, and all we could see was his arms and legs going, you know, and rolled down. It hit some stones and jumped over, went down and got down into the creek, and we could see the water splash out. We thought, boy, he's going to be dead, you know, when we got down there. He got down there, and he was all passed out, you know, he wasn't breathing. We didn't know what the hell to do. I said to Lawrence, I said, what the hell are we going to tell Pa now, you know? Hell, he ain't going to live. Anyway, we sat around, fooled around there, and we got some air moving into him. He was all right. Yeah, it was on a Sunday afternoon in the fall of the year, and this guy, the three of us, myself and Lawrence and Valley, we used to, when we get home from church, right away go in hunting, you know, squirrel hunting. And anyway, we went back back at the homestead there, and went to, the garden was there, we went through the garden, and John B. Alt, they had 60 acres of pasture back in there, and they had about, about 35, 40 head of young stock in there, you know. There was
What's young stock?
Young stock, cattle.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And we went back there, we were hunting, and we got up on the hillside, and old Jim Hunt, he had his land came down in the kind of down in the pocket where he used to throw all his junk, you know, his old wire fences. And there was a wash tub in there that had the bottom out of it, and it had two metal handles, you know. And I picked the doggone thing up, and I thought, geez, I'll roll it down the hill, you know. And the hill was pretty steep, and down below was all the livestock, the cattle down there was about 25 or 30 of them there. They were Holsteins and Durham and all mixed different kinds, you know, in the pasture. They were laying down there. There was some young trees there. And there was a creek there, and they were laying there in the shade, you know, just chewing your cud. And we didn't think about it at all. They throwed that tub down, and it started rolling down, you know, and the bottom was out of it, and it's clumpity clump, and they hit another stone, jump in the air, and clumpity clump. And we could see right away what was coming. As the cattle, they started looking up, you know, they got up on their feet, and they put their tail up, and it got down near them, and they took it, they go.
That's called stampeding.
Yeah. And they just went over fences and every darn thing all the way down along the creek, you know. We could see them going.
I don't
Of course,
think
we
they
didn't
heard much.
pay any attention to it. We kept on hunting, and then that afternoon we got home about 5:30, and Ma, she was out right away. She said to us, "Did you guys chase them cattle this afternoon?" They run down all the way down through. They went up back at Haji Alt's barn and down back at her house, and they went right through the garden. And Mrs. Haji Alt came out and she says, "Oh, there goes my ground," you know, the ground was good. No more sauerkraut this year. The cattle, they got so wild, and they went all the way, put her down the plain. They went way down where this guy had owned the cattle. He had the big Sean Alt, you know, He had owned the cattle, and there was one steer that they couldn't catch all that fall. They first got him in the winter when there was snow on the ground, you know. They went out and a bunch of guys with the horses and they lassoed him and had him home.
That would have made a good Western movie,
Yeah.
wouldn't it?
Yeah.
This is a story about my dad's brother, George. He came over here to his country in 1920, I guess it was. And my dad came over here in 1914. And he wanted to come. That was just when World War I started. You know, my brother, Uncle George, wanted to come right away, shortly after my dad came. But he got stuck over there in the German army in World War I. So he came over here in 1919, I guess it was. And of course, he was they called him a hooper, a barrel maker, you know. He got a job at the Joseph Flitz Brewing Company in Milwaukee, and he made barrels there, and beer barrels, until 1929 when the Prohibition came. There was no more barrel making, you know, because there was no more beer made and no more whiskey or anything, you know. And anyway, he worked there till 1929, and then he didn't have anything to do, so he stayed by my folks, you know. And he wasn't married. He was about 30 years old, something like that. And anyway, he stayed there and helped Dad cut wood and stuff like that, and chores, and he worked for some of the neighbors around. He worked for Rudolph Knockreiner for about $300 coming. He didn't get paid, and he always, after he went back to Germany, he always wrote my dad and told him, try to get that money for me from Knockreiner, but he never did get it, you know. That's $300. Anyway, at Knockreiner, he was a bootlegger too, and he made the whiskey and they sold it. He brought Uncle George, he'd bring some home to my dad, you know, pint bottles of it, quart bottles of it, beer bottles. He used to hide it up in the cow barn, you know, up on the wall. The horse manger was there. We'd go up there, we'd sneak a slug of it now and then, Morris and I. It tasted pretty good, but it was sharp, you know, moonshine. Anyway, he, this Knockreiner, he made the moonshine, you know, and the revenue men would come out there at different times and look around and all over, and they couldn't find, you know, where the hell he had it. And you know where he had it? It's still, he had out the cow barn yard, he had a big horse manure pile. And he had a hole in a straw stack, and a little vent going out the top, you know, so he could have the fire in there to make the booze. And he had that straw stack, he had a bunch of horse manure on top of it, so it looked like a manure pile. The revenue man came back there and looked different times, but never thought about going and looking in the manure pile for a steal.